All right. Well, hello, and welcome to the Shifts and Pucks podcast. You can follow us on Twitter at Shifts and Pucks, Facebook.com Shifts and Pucks, YouTube.com Shifts and Pucks. Subscribe wherever you get your audio. Leave us a like, all of that good stuff. And we are in the midst of course, the NHL season has started. It started really last week in Europe, but we have had games now in North America, but we are continuing our division previews as we are now looking at the Central Division. And after looking at the Atlantic Division, I said, let's bring back Jeremiah to look at the Central Division. So from Alaska, Jeremiah joining us now. Jeremiah, how are you doing? What is going on?
Great. I'm doing great, Kev. Really excited that we have hockey back, meaningful hockey to talk about, ready to get this new season underway. Super excited to cover it and really happy to be here with you, man. Thank you for asking me again. Glad to do it. It's a pleasure.
Awesome. We have had 3 games start yesterday. 3 of them actually were in the Central Division. So pardon the pun, we'll get cracking.
Yeah.
And let's start, we'll go bottom to top, but I think the 2 bottom teams last year were Chicago and the former Arizona, now Utah Hockey Club. And we'll start with Utah and the new fresh face that they are bringing. And look, all things considered here with Ryan Smith, who I know the NHL really wanted. And, this was a kind of a late pull of getting Arizona into Utah. And, you listen to Phoenix Sports and Alex Meruelo is persona non grata for the absolute disaster that the Arizona Coyotes turned out to be. I know that there were criticisms about the rink last night. I know that there were criticisms about the sight lines. I think there's nothing but applause for what Utah pulled this off. They set up an environment. They came to support the team. From a Canadian perspective, I think we're going to have to teach them to not applaud Gary Bettman, but boo Gary Bettman, because that is the way. But you know what? Overall, I thought they put on a really excellent night, and I think there's a lot of I think was a lot of perceptions that we had about Utah coming into this that I think they broke a lot of barriers, and I thought they set up for, in terms of the environment of Utah, they set up a really good start.
I apologize for cutting you off there. I'll just say this real quick. Like, in this case, Gary Bettman deserves to be cheered. He got the NHL out of the situation in Arizona that was unattainable because of the owner.
Yep.
Who wasn't paying bills. They weren't. I mean, I liken it to the movie Major League, when the owner would basically move them from nice jet to crappy airplane to bus. I don't know if you remember the movie.
Yes.
She was basically this is what was happening with Alex Meruelo at the National Hockey League level. Now these players can feel like they're not playing for an ECHL team the way they were being handled. The NHL went out and got maybe one of the best available billionaires to kind of thrust this team into a really good situation. And here's where I think they will be successful. Now, we cannot deny that the NHL, as far as a grassroots movement in Arizona, has been successful. One of the flagship teams in the NHL, the Toronto Maple Leafs, have 2 kids who came out of Arizona in Matthew Nyes and Austin Matthews, playing on their NHL roster. And, Matthews is a superstar. So youth movement in Arizona hockey is good. Ryan Smith, one thing he has done really well as the Utah Jazz owner, 70,000 youth basketball players from Utah play in a grassroots development he started. He has pledged that same commitment for youth hockey there. It is going to go. They also have winter in Utah, so they will get ice so they can play outside. They don't have to have very much like Canada, Alaska, Minnesota, the U.S. states where you can skate outside in the wintertime. They're going to have that ability. Give them time. They're going to do a $900 million renovation to the Delta Airlines Center there. And that stadium will actually become the largest seating stadium in the NHL with over 24,000 people. So it's only going to be a matter of time. I believe the Winter Olympics will be there in 2032. This is the best case scenario for the NHL. They got out of a situation with an owner with no legal problems. Again, and now Morello has actually relinquished any control of the Coyotes. So if they ever move back to Arizona, they don't have to go through him. I know people love to hate on Gary Bettman, but this was an absolute masterclass from him and lawyering and how to delicately maneuver a team out of like the absolute worst situation. They were playing at Arizona State's arena, which is by all means is not a terrible arena, but it's not for NHL. And it just sucks that it didn't work in Arizona, but I think this is for the best. And what's great about that whole thing, Kevin, I think you won't disagree. I actually had a chance to talk to Bill Armstrong a little bit at the Hockey Hall of Fame last year, and I wanted to talk to him about the Twitter account, Bill Armstrong's Burner, which he was really cool about, because I don't know if you've ever seen that, but it's funny. By the way, a giant of a man. I'm not a small guy by any stretch of the imagination. He's like 6'4". His wife was absolutely a sweetheart too. They were awesome. You could tell they wanted it to work there in Arizona just based on my conversation with him. But I'll say this. They kept him. They kept Andre Tourney, and they have one of the best. The one thing they did well there is they drafted and developed, and they have a good team. So I don't know about the Utah hockey fans. I can't speak for them, but they should be excited. They're not getting an expansion franchise. They're getting a recycled franchise, if you will. But it's got really good pieces. Dylan Gunther, Logan Cooley, Clayton Keller. They go out and get Sergachev in the offseason. They have a pretty decent goaltending tandem. Last night's game notwithstanding, the Chicago Blackhawks did hit about 10 posts. So it'll be interesting to see how Chicago is this year. But, they've got some excitement building there. They're still a very young team. So I think they're just going to have time to grow with that city and that fan base. And, they sold out their season tickets like no problem. So, and I saw the videos from the obstructed views. It's going to cut the very end of the ice off for people sitting in the ends on one section of the arena. It's not the worst thing in the world. And they're super discounting those. Also, another thing that Ryan Smith did, he's going to commit to the youth movement, but they have concessions there, nothing more than like $3 for a lot of like family items. So they're making it very family friendly. They are hitting a home run right out of the park. We know the players are going to travel in style and be staying at the best hotels. It's an absolute win-win for the NHL, and eventually we'll know what their team name is, Yetis or whatever it's going to be. For now, we have the hockey club, and it's it is what it is. We've seen in our lifetimes, Kev, we've seen a lot of teams move, and I've seen Winnipeg go and come back, and Atlanta leave or to Winnipeg, and
come back too. Yeah.
And they could come back too. So it's just one of those things where I think it's a pretty great situation for the NHL to be in, to land on their feet. There's a lot of Utah is it's kind of like the new Silicon Valley there. They have a lot of tech stuff there. That's where Ryan Smith's kind of got his business going. He's obviously from there, family guy. I think it's going to be a good thing, man. And they got themselves a heck of an owner. And I'll tell you what, if you're not familiar, a little bit of this should be credited to Pat McAfee's show, because Ryan had become friends with Pat and came on Pat's show and talked about how he wanted to become an NHL owner and that he wanted to bring NHL team to Utah. And I don't know if he had met with Gary Bettman beforehand. I don't know the timeline there, but that went quickly. And the NHL lucked out in this one, but it worked out great. So I'm only hoping for the best for them. As a guy who, rooted for the Coyotes, I'd get to a couple of games a year and see them because my wife works in Arizona from time to time. So just to get out of Alaska in the wintertime is always a nice thing. But to go see a hockey game is great. Look, too, the Coyotes gave us Biz, Tyson Nash. They've had some good people work for them. So we'll see. It's gonna be interesting, man.
Well, yeah, as far as the Coyotes part of this was not on the fans. I mean, I know that there's going to be some criticism about the fans, but I think this was more about ownership than it was the fans. I think there was a fan base that did love the Coyotes. Just, I think, poor ownership, not only from Alex Morello, but throughout the history of the Arizona Coyotes. And you're right. I think it's great that this organization is under a guy that's committed and kind of has a little bit of a small town feel. I think it's going to bring something unique to the National Hockey League. And I think that this innovation that Utah will bring, I think will be very interesting. As far as the team, they kind of remind me a little bit of the Montreal Canadiens. They are almost there. They have some really good pieces. They added John Marino, who wasn't available last night. They did add Ian Cole, who I think will add a veteran presence. They, I mean, they're
Yeah, you saw a lot of Ian Cole in Vancouver last year. He played well for them. Yeah.
Yeah, and except the playoffs, he had some unfortunate breaks in the playoffs, but yeah,
sure.
I mean, and they got a guy that I think people are going to start to get to know in Clayton Keller. And then you talked about Cooley and Gunther. They are going to eventually grow into the position that they're going to get in. I don't see playoffs for them this year,
Sure.
but I do see this team making some progress that I could see them competing for a playoff spot next year. And you're right. They got a bunch of draft picks. They got a bunch of cap space. They've got a lot of room and a lot of things that they can play with. They will be dangerous down the stretch or down the year. So I think there's a lot to like in Utah. And I think you're right, getting out of the situation that they were in Arizona and getting into this situation, I think will help Utah a lot. So
yeah, I can't disagree with you at all.
Yeah. As far as Chicago, I don't think I realized how many veterans that they added to that lineup, but you got Teuvo Teravainen, and you got Tyler Bertuzzi, you added Pat Maroon, you added Alec Martinez. I mean, they went all veteran in here, and kind of understandable. You've got some guys that need to develop.
Pat Maroon.
We'll get to him in a second. Connor Bedard just looked pretty confident last night with the puck.
Yeah, I wanted to real quick. We talked about this a little bit before the show, but I wanted to ask you, and I saw this a little bit too. It did feel like Bedard was kind of moving at a speed that no one else on the ice was moving, and maybe he was a little bit frustrated with the players around him keeping up with his game. I don't know. I didn't. Did you see a little bit of that, or?
Yeah, I think in terms of Chicago, he's certainly the most dynamic player, and I think he's going to have to. I want to say he's going to have to learn how to harness that frustration, and that just is going to come with experience, right? But and I think the veterans that are in that lineup are going to help him kind of. I don't want to say he's not professional, but he's young, right? And he just needs to needs to learn some things. So don't question he's going to be a great player. No question he's going to be a superstar. He already is. I mean, he's got this game. You're already going to watch him in the Winter Classic in St. Louis, so they are putting a lot of buzz on him.
Is it too much too early, do you think, or?
I kind of do think it is too much too early. I think that this is let's quickly compare McDavid. And I mean, he kind of was, people had the spotlight on him, but it wasn't as big as this with Bedard in terms of he's getting all these national games. McDavid was able to kind of hide in Edmonton and build his game. Even Crosby, to a certain extent, was able to hide. And, there wasn't, we expected things, but we knew that it was eventually to come. I feel like putting Bedard in this spotlight, I think for Bedard, it's going to put him in places where he's going to have too high expectations, which is totally fine. But it's just, we got to let the kid breathe, right? Yeah. 95% of the players that come in that are drafted in the NHL are not ready. And I'm not saying Bedard wasn't ready, but he's probably not ready for the spotlight that the NHL is giving him.
Well, I say this in comparison to McDavid. Bedard did get injured his rookie year. I know McDavid missed a portion of his rookie year, but
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think the difference is McDavid has kind of been able to. I don't want to say languish, but he kind of has languished. Not his game, but like the team has in Edmonton up until, up until the last few years, where they went on this. Obviously, they went on the Cup run and stuff last year, but Bedard is in the third largest media market in the U.S. in Chicago. And I think that's probably why you're seeing the highlights. So, like everyone from the Midwest, like if you live in Iowa or whatever, you live in Indiana, a lot of these teams that don't have hockey teams, they root for the Chicago Blackhawks a lot of times. So their TVs are tuned in. So I just wonder, he's getting a lot more eyes on than maybe, say, Connor McDavid, fair or unfair. That's the truth. So I wonder there. But I think they just needed to add the veteran leadership to the Blackhawks, one, to kind of field a more competitive team, and two, to kind of teach some of these younger kids how to be pros, right? And they had they unfortunately, the Corey Perry thing didn't work out. And Foligno was hurt a lot of last year. But it's not just Bedard. I mean, if you think about it, they've got Frank Nazar, who's a kid who played at Michigan. Teravainen obviously comes back. He's one of those veterans that you probably want to keep around. Obviously, he came up with the Blackhawks, then spent the last few years with Carolina. But Kurashev is very young. They have all these Nolan Allen. I didn't see Korchinski's not even on their roster, their NHL roster.
They sent him down to the AHL to start.
So, and I think he played quite a bit last year in the NHL, did he not? So, and I will always have this conversation. I feel like defensemen just mature at a way different rate. We've been lucky with the Makars and these guys who are super young that come in and make instant impacts, but it's like I think even they go through their bumps and bruises a little bit as far as learning that position. So, I like bringing in guys like TJ Brody and Alex Martinez. I mean, those guys played in hotbeds. Alec Martinez played for the Kings and was on those cup runs, and obviously was with Vegas and on their cup run, and then TJ Brody obviously played in Toronto. You can't get more of a media spotlight there. So I think those guys will be like a calming effect for them. So, I mean, I didn't see anything I hated from Chicago. I think the emotions were high in the game. It's obviously one game, but I really like Luke Richardson. It's funny that you mentioned him because I think he come from Montreal's coaching.
He came from Ottawa, was I believe his last spot. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. He was an assistant in Ottawa.
Yeah, but I like him as a coach. I think they're going to do a really good job there. Feel like they teach the details. You're seeing a lot of the things that you like from them. They were probably outskilled last night, and it was an emotional night for those Utah players. But I mean, I do want to say it felt like they hit 10 posts in that game, and that game could have easily went to Chicago too. So.
Yeah, they went in and they went in and they made it 3-2, and then they hit the post on the empty net, and then Gunther scores again to wrap it up. I think I don't see them. I think that they're going to be interested in the trade deadline. I mean, you got Taylor Hall, who is a UFA. I think a lot of teams are going to want to add some scoring, are going to be inquiring about him.
That's a guy I could see going back to Edmonton.
Well, I have another guy that might go back to Edmonton.
Yeah, go ahead.
Pat Maroon.
Yeah, I hear you. We talked about this a little bit before. You think Edmonton needs a fourth line left wing to
well, I think they will need that experience. They don't have a lot of depth in that. I mean, we'll talk about this in Pacific Mid Division, but their depth is, and we'll talk about this with St. Louis as well. Their depth in Edmonton is, I still think, very questionable, specifically on the blue line. I have some, but I think a Pat Maroon can be a person that I would not be surprised. And look, Stan Bowman connected with Chicago. I could see that happening. That would not surprise me. But even on defense, I could see a guy like Connor Murphy being a guy that Vancouver is interested in as for a potential right shot defenseman if they need to upgrade. So there's a few things there. Few players on that. Craig Smith, I think, can be a guy that you're looking at as a trade target as well. So I don't see the Blackhawks in the playoffs. I do think that they're going to be a tougher team to play against this year. I think their biggest weakness right now is, quite frankly, is their goaltending. I thought Mrazek struggled against Utah. I think it was a couple. I think he would want that Dylan Guenther goal, the first one, back. So we'll see.
And maybe the fifth one that was very last minute, but
yeah.
So they have Bressois too, though, I think, right? So he's banged up.
Yeah.
So that, I think if he gets back, that'll help stabilize that goaltending tandem.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I got you.
Yeah. So that's Chicago. That's Utah. Yeah. Go ahead. What was it going to say?
No. I just was agreeing with you.
Okay. Let's continue on and let's go to a team that I think it's going to be very interesting to kind of see where this team is at. And I think that there might be one of the, make sure we got this, we're in the right year here. Let's go here. There we go. And we go to the Western Conference. And it is the Minnesota Wild. When I think one of the big stories of this year with them is going to be Kirill Kaprizov. Does he stay? Does he go? I don't think he's traded this during the season. I think that's something in the offseason.
Oh, they're 100% keeping him. There's no way.
I hope.
I'll tell you why. I believe this. One, just based off what I've heard from Bill Guerin in the interviews I've heard from him, they're keeping that guy. You don't get a generational player like that and let him leave. Top left wing on 31 teams in the NHL, this guy would be. I mean, name a better left wing that you'd rather have, just based on age and stuff. So the reason I think, Kevin, that this is a non-story is they're going to have $15 million off the cap after this season, with the buyouts from Parise and Suter being off their books, or very minuscule. It's less than a couple $100,000. So if you look at Cap Friendly or Puckpedia, there's a couple Puckpedia. There's a couple different places now that have taken Cap Friendly's place, but I just do, man. They don't have a lot of like big contracts that would prevent them from keeping him at. He probably gets a $2 million raise where he's making 11, so he's going to eat up a little bit of that. But they've locked up long-term Faber. They hit a home run in the draft with Zeev Buyam from the national champions Denver University. So I feel like they're probably not going to do much this year. They might compete for a wild card. I just think health is a big thing for them. But they have Jesper Wallstedt coming up in goal that they've got. I feel like that it's obviously the future is tomorrow for them and not now. But I feel like they're really. Honestly, I kind of question the hire of Bill Guerin from the get, but have thought he has done an unbelievable job. And I think he came up under Rutherford and the Pittsburgh system or what. But just really impressed with the juggling act he's done. He made the right. I think a lot of people question him buying out Suter and Parise. Everybody would tell you now those were good moves. That saved them. This team would not have been competitive with those two on the roster. Yes, it's eaten up a ton of cap, but I just feel like, they're probably going to be mid-Asona again or whatever, like everybody likes to call them. But they've got to keep Kaprizov. I don't see the only way I see how they let him walk is if they do move him for another generational star that's maybe a little bit more in line with where they feel like their team is going. But what is he, 27, 20? He's not old, so it's just one of those things where you've got Boldy, you've got I don't know. I like their roster. they're old in a couple of spots, but they're super gritty in the bottom half. Guys like Marcus Foligno and Frederick Goudreau and stuff. I just feel like they are one of those teams that they're not ready to be a cup contender, or a serious playoff, but they're not far away.
Yeah, they're kind of. I'm not going to call them that, but I do. They're kind of in the middle there. Marco Rossi is going to take a step. He's playing with Kaprizov now. I think Brock Faber is. I thought Minnesota kind of came away with the winner of that Brock Faber Kevin Fiala trade.
Easily.
Yeah. And they're going to be a relaxed team with Marc-Andre Fleury there. And they don't have a bad blue line. They don't have a great blue line. They don't have a bad forward group. They don't have a great forward group. I don't see playoffs for them. But I think hopefully they get, I think that they're going in the right direction. And they're probably a couple of drafts away, and then they'll have some room, and that's a really good hockey market too. And there'll be players that will want to play there. So I don't see the playoffs this year for them, but I think in a couple of years they're kind of in that Utah spot. They'll be battling for a playoff spot. I could see that next year and the year after.
They sell out preseason games for the Wild.
Yeah.
So it's a great, obviously the Frozen Four was at the Xcel Energy Center this year. It's a great arena. It's a hockey arena. It's awesome, man. So they for sure. I'm with you. I will say this. I do want to disagree you on one thing. I actually love their decor with Jonas Brodin, Faber, Middleton, Spurgeon, if they're healthy.
Yeah.
And then you got Merrill and Bogosian are, they're serviceable bottom pairing guys, but when you've got guys like Zeev Buium in your system, which he could be, like Buium, in my opinion, is pro ready. He's pro ready. He looked unbelievable in the Frozen Four, and I think they're going to be for years to come one of the best defensive teams in the NHL, and it's going to be. And John Hines is already kind of a defensive coach. I didn't agree with that firing because I really like Dean Evison. I think he's going to do a good job with the Columbus Blue Jackets. But I think Minnesota's a lot closer than people think. Obviously this year though, I'm with you. I think they'll compete for a playoff spot, but I don't know that they'll easily be in the top 3 of the Central there. So I'm kind of with you there. It's just health is a big thing for them. They've had a lot of injury problems. So I think if they're a healthy team, they're in the mix for sure.
Yeah. That will be the question with Minnesota.
Yeah.
Let's get to St. Louis.
Yeah. Interesting.
I know Nashville made we'll get to Nashville and all of the moves that they made, but St. Louis made the gutsiest move of the offseason, the boldest move of the offseason, and offer sheeting and getting Philip Broberg and Dylan Holloway away from the Oilers. Philip Broberg was the Oilers' 3rd best defenseman in the playoffs last year.
I totally agree. Agree.
And I'll tell you this, Oilers fans, you are going to miss Dylan Holloway. That's a guy that you can play up and down the lineup, a young guy. I know that the Oilers fans are saying you can't pay Broberg $4 million. You should have paid him at least about $1.2 million for either Broberg or Holloway, and you chose Jeff Skinner over both of them. And you could clearly see when you're watching that St. Louis-Seattle game, Broberg was adding something to that Blues blue line. And, of course, without Torrey Krug, of course, they put him on LTIR. Their blue line is good.
And, Kevin, like last night, Bannister had Holloway playing top line left minutes wing with Neighbors and Thomas.
Yeah.
And Broberg is a second pair, but he scores a huge goal in that game.
Yep.
Already both had points, already paid dividends. It's going to be hard to say. I know a lot of salty Edmonton fans over that thing, and my friend Tyler Yaremchuk from Oilers Nation. I know, but he's realistic about it. Edmonton is not a better team without Philip Broberg and Dylan Holloway. I know they recently just got Raph Lavoie back from a re-waiver claiming them back from Vegas, but like if they didn't have him, they essentially have nobody from the Ken Holland era. I think Doug Armstrong does more with less than any general manager in the NHL. I know you and I talked about this before the show started. I watched this game from start to finish. I thought the Kraken dominated 2 periods, but they just couldn't score. The thing that a lot of people don't have in the NHL is elite goaltending. And you can say what you want to about the St. Louis Blues, and heck, you could say what you want to about Jordan Bennington because he's a little bit of a hothead. He may be one of the best goalies and could be starting goalie for Canada for any of these upcoming things because when he is on, he's incredible. He literally was the game. And then their speed with guys like Kyrou and stuff, I saw Kyrou win the fastest skater in a couple years ago at the Vegas All-Star game. And in person, I happened to be there. It was awesome. And that McDavid was there. And he beat McDavid. So this is how fast Kyrou is. He's legendarily fast. So I don't know what to make of them because I mean Seattle is, I don't know what the litmus test is of this that the Seattle Kraken are. I think Seattle's got to figure themselves out. They're a new team basically with a new coach. They added some pieces. And I know they're in the Pacific. So but I mean, like if you look at the Blues, they kind of run like a lot of decent, like they're going to be a 4-line team. They're not going to overwhelm you with skill. I do worry about their back end on the, like it feels like Parayko has taken a lot of steps back since their cup run. But adding guys like Broberg is going to help them. Obviously, they're going to be missing Torrey Krug. I believe Saad is out for them, but he was out, like I think his wife had a baby, so he'll be probably in the next game. And then Oscar Sundqvist. So they have a couple of guys that will probably be in and out of the lineup. Always have a soft spot for Nathan Walker, too, being an Australian guy. And he was on the Cap Stanley Cup team. So anyway, Nathan Walker, shout out. But I mean, dude, when Braden Shin is your third line center, we'll see what the Pavel Buchnevich at center produces. Bannister's trying this thing. I mean, hearing Ray Ferraro talk about it last night on the broadcast, he's like, here's a guy, he's like 28. I've not seen it be successful where you move a guy from wing to center. But I mean, it is just hockey, right? So it's not brain surgery. I feel like if you have a basic concept of how to be a good two-way player, I'm not saying this about Buchnevich, but they clearly feel like they need him in that role. So it'll be interesting. They're missing some pieces. I don't feel like they're a playoff team, but because of their goaltending, they might become one.
Yeah, this is where I'm kind of at with the Blues. Is you look at I look at this roster, and it's kind of a little bit like Minnesota. It's not super spectacular, but I do wonder if Jordan Kyrou is going to make a step this year. I wonder about Robert Thomas making a step. Jake Neighbors also is a guy that could take a step as well. I think that one of the edges that the Blues have, though, compared to the other two teams that I see in this wild card race, which includes the Kings and the Kraken, I could see them making the playoffs because I think that they have an edge in goal. And I think that was a clear example of Bennington kind of held them in last night against on Tuesday or whatever
yesterday.
Yeah. And you're right. I think Jordan Bennington is in that Team Canada conversation. I actually do have the Blues in the playoffs. I think they're the second wild card team. So I think that they're going to make it. I don't think it's a spectacular team, but I think it's a team that can get just enough done to get into the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, when you compare them to Minnesota, there's a lot of things I like about Minnesota over their game, but when it comes to goaltending, I like the Blues, so I could totally see them being in the mix for sure, man.
Yeah. All right. Let's get to the hype team, which is the Nashville Predators. They made the biggest splash getting Brady Shea, Jonathan Marchessault, and Steven Stamkos. They have one of the best They have one of the best goalies in the game in UC Saros.
I
They
agree
have
with
one
that.
of the best defensemen in the game in Roman Yossi. It's an interesting team that I think people have, I think people are locking them into the top 3 in this Central Division.
Yeah, I don't think that's too far. I mean, Kev, you live there in Vancouver. I'm sure you watch the playoff games very closely. I felt like the margin of victory for them. I mean, to be quite frank with you, I felt like the Nashville Predators outplayed Vancouver in that series in the first round last year. But they just didn't get the results. They've lacked secondary scoring, and when you add one of the best power play goal scorers of a generation in Steven Stamkos, and you add a guy who's produced in the regular season and playoffs like Jonathan Marchessault. So yeah, I'm a little bit concerned about their age, but I feel like any level of weakness that they had, they sort of addressed. You might have wanted to see a little bit more defensive depth. They add Brady Shea. I mean, Brady Shea is a heck of a defenseman. He was sort of buried in that plethora of great defensemen. I think Brady Shea will be more impactful for the Nashville Predators than his loss will be for Carolina because of how they draft and develop and how good their defensive core is with guys like Slavin and such. But you have a Selke Trophy winner, Stanley Cup champion, Conn Smythe winner, and Ryan O'Reilly, who was on the Blues, which we were just talking about. Philip Forsberg can pot the net. You're going to be playing. I mean, to me, the big question is, and you know this, and I know this, like beyond O'Reilly, can Tommy Novak, Colton Sissons, those guys be good centers? Can they drive those second and third lines prospectively? And I think if you don't have good center play, it's just very hard to win in the Stanley Cup playoffs. I think there's no question in my mind this team is better than they were last year. They're more deep. They've obviously they've got to stay healthy. I think they're in better position to do something in the playoffs. They put all their eggs in the UC Saros basket because they didn't feel like Yaroslav Askarov was ready. So
they were right.
Well, but from what I've been told, like he got sent down, but he has an injury or something. So like, obviously the San Jose Sharks aren't going to compete for a decade, 5 to 7 years. So they don't need to be good anyway. So it's what's best for him is to be in the minors. He got a nice little contract extension. He's not making a significant amount of money. I think it was a good move by both parties. You get rid of a guy who's not happy. He's already proven that he could. I mean, he was dominating at the AHL. It was just like not a child. He did not need to play for the Milwaukee Admirals anymore. No, let's see what he does with the Barracuda Sharks if he has to play an extended amount of time or rehab stuff in the. I do think he will be up at the NHL level at some point this year for the San Jose Sharks. But again, I mean, I don't really think there's a lot to say. I don't think they're a Stanley Cup champion or Stanley Cup contender, but I think they could make some serious noise in the playoffs. I could see them in a conference final. I could see them upsetting a team like an Edmonton or a Vancouver or something because of the skill and experience they have. But you know, the great thing about them is they have an awesome fan base. They went out and they had space and they used it. I mean, I can't think of a haul of that level of talent like being injected into one team. That would be maybe my one concern too, is how are they going to be, cohesively as a unit? But you feel like Marchessault is a smart player. Stamkos is a smart player. Those guys will fit in pretty seamlessly. Brady Shea's, this is not his, first rodeo. He started with the New York Rangers even. So I feel like he's going to fit in well. He's going to be playing with a pretty responsible winger, defensive partner in Shen, it looks like for now. So, it's interesting, man. I don't know where you are on them, but I feel like they're right there. They're definitely, I think they're easily going to be in the top 3 in that division, because as we get to it, I just feel like the other teams that didn't add as much and maybe lost a little bit here and there. So, they definitely are probably the most improved team from that division. And I think will easily compete for a top 3 spot in that to make the playoffs. So
now, that being said, I wouldn't be surprised if they got off to a slow start because of chemistry issues and trying to figure everything out.
yeah,
I think if they get a step from Tommy Novak, and I think if they get a step from Luke Evangelista, they are going to be a hell of a problem for a lot of teams. At this point, I have them third in the Central.
yeah, I don't disagree.
Yeah, so that's where I kind of see them right now. But I think they're definitely more talented. They definitely improved. There's a lot to like about them, but they could have some depth issues too. I'm not sure I like that fourth line, but I think that again, you have the trade deadline. That's a team that will be, it looks like Barry Trotz will be aggressive at the trade deadline. If you're aggressive in the offseason, you're going to be aggressive during the trade deadline as well. So I don't think this is an unfinished product in Nashville. Right now, I have them in third. We'll go to the Canadian team in this division, which actually, no, we're going in order. We're going with the Colorado Avalanche. I think this is a team that everybody is sleeping on. And I think you talk about Connor McDavid. Everyone's talking about how angry Connor McDavid is, and you don't want to bet against Connor McDavid. Do you know who else is angry? Nathan McKinnon.
The Nate dog?
Nathan McKinnon angry is a very dangerous player. I will say this may be a hot take for some people. If I was to bet on an angry guy that can take me to the level, I will bet on Nathan McKinnon over Connor McDavid, and he's done it.
Yeah, he's won a championship.
Colorado Avalanche team, yeah, I think they are. I think Mikko Rantanen is incredibly underrated.
Set to be a free agent too, right? So
they're going to have to bring the bank to him. They are getting back Gabriel Landeskog. They had a situation where Valerie Nichushkin, during the middle of a playoff run against Dallas, had to go into the substance program.
Yeah, the players' assistance program. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a huge distraction. They've had a couple of really unfortunate playoff failures here in the first and second round.
Yeah, I mean, they lost to Seattle after their Cup championship run.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure.
When they played Winnipeg, they played at a level that Winnipeg could not handle. I think when Cale Makar plays at that level, there is maybe one other defenseman that is in his echelon. I think that they're going. One ad that nobody is talking about also in Colorado is the ad of Oliver Shillington.
Yeah, that's a good pickup. If you're a Calgary fan, I know he's been banged up, but pretty great defensive guy. Real quick though, I don't want to gloss over what you said. Who is on the level of Makar?
Quinn Hughes.
What?
Quinn Hughes.
Okay, fair. Okay, I'll take it. Yeah. Unbelievable. I mean, is there a better defensive pairing than Makar and Devon Taves? Probably no. I like their top four. I mean, let's just be straight up honest. I don't know Landeskog comes back and he hasn't played in 2 years. I'm not sure they need Landeskog back. They need Val Nichushkin back. They need one or the two of them to do some damage. I actually thought Jonathan Drouin played unbelievably well with McKinnon last year until he got hurt, which I felt so bad for the kid because he just kind of had a really rocky start to his career, and it looked like he had finally found what we kind of thought this guy would be, being like a 4th overall pick. I love Colorado. I always will have a soft spot for them. I believe the greatest hockey rivalry in my lifetime was the Red Wings and the Avalanche. It sucks that we don't get those games on a regular anymore. It was so good when the Red Wings were in the Western Conference. Joe Sakic, Peter Forsberg, Adam Foote, Patrick Waugh, obviously there was no salary cap then, so that'll be interesting. Yeah. My biggest problem with the Avs is after their first two lines, especially if they have, let's just say for the hypothetical, they get Landeskog and Nichushkin back. Those guys are still going to play in their top 6, probably. Maybe not Landeskog. Even if you get Landeskog at on the 4th line, who cares? He's playing and he's getting leadership on the line.
Something.
Right. Nichushkin, I know, will be an unbelievable. I really want to see this. I'm rooting for this guy so bad. I mean, he was a high pick for Dallas. He's kind of just had ups and downs, but he got a really nice contract with with Colorado was obviously just an absolute dominant force. I found it a thing even before he had the thing early in the playoffs. He was so good. So I'm with you, man. I totally think that this is a team that people could be sleeping on. I feel like beyond their top two lines in offense and defense, they get a little bit thin. Let's see how guys like Kiviranta, excuse me. Obviously, I liked Miles Woodad. That was a great ad. There's a guy, he didn't leave a bad team to come win a cup. I mean, he was with New Jersey. I think if you asked New Jersey, they would have liked to have kept him, but they've drafted and developed too well. Again, one of my ideas for the new CBA is allow these teams like a 25% discount against the cap for drafted developed players. If you draft a guy or sign a guy as an unfree agent, he's never played for another pro team, it just allows them to manage the cap a little bit better. Let's hope that they get to that, 15 to 20%. I had this idea years ago and I've seen some other people copy it, but I think it would be a great idea. And you could keep these guys. But yeah, I mean, they have Lehkonen is out for them. Hopefully they get him back. That's going to solidify their top 9 if he's in there. Tucker Poolman is injured on IR if they get him back. And obviously, if Landeskog and Nichushkin can come back, this team could be a totally different team. So I do wonder if they are able to make it work with the cap. They may have to make some maneuvering things there. But, I mean, the biggest thing for me is, with Colorado, outside of that, is Georgiev. I mean, you can't play Georgiev 65 games, Kev. That was a problem for them. They overplayed their starter. They didn't have a decent backup. I mean, I was the one calling for Jeremy Swayman to go to the Colorado Avalanche because I'm like, they need him more than anybody. They're a cup champion team if they have that quality of goaltending. So, and they won it with Darcy Kemper, but like, you can't ride Georgiev. They've got to get something from Justus Annunen. I know Chris McFarland, who is now the GM there, obviously thinks that is enough for them. But those are my big questions. But I mean, you could make the same arguments about Edmonton. Is Skinner the guy that's going to get him over the top? Are you going to get consistent goaltending from him? So they're a cup contending team for sure. If they get all the pieces back and all the cards fall for them, I don't see how they're not right there in the mix, man. I think they're easily in the top 3 of this division. I'm sure you feel the same way.
They are my Stanley Cup winner.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I agree with you on the questions and goaltending, but they will. Chris McFarland, Colorado, they added last year. They will add again. That's just the way that they do things. They're always going to be around that. They're always going to be around it. And yeah, I just think that I don't think that their depth is that bad, but they'll find a way to improve that. They're shrewd enough. I think I could see them. I think they're the Stanley Cup winner for me right now, but I do agree that Georgiev, I think how they handle Georgiev is going to be.
You can't play him 65 games. It's too much.
I don't think any goalie can anymore.
55 games is that's the green area that you want to be in. So yeah, and again, health is a factor for them. They can't lose McKinnon or Makar for any length of time. I know Makar was banged up a little bit last year too, so we'll see that. I mean, but those guys got to be on the roster the whole year. So yeah, I love I could easily see them winning the Stanley Cup if all the cards fall their way for sure. I don't think there's anybody out there in their right mind that would doubt Nathan McKinnon. But I just feel like they've got a lot of things that have to fall their way. And then that being said, maybe they add like a goalie or something at the deadline to kind of help with that. So not that Georgie is not a capable starter, and they obviously proved that they don't need like Patrick Waugh in net anymore, but like it is one of those things where it is, I do have some concerns just as their depth as a whole, so we'll see. I'm with you there though. Go Avs, go.
All right. That leaves us to the Winnipeg Jets, who they brought in Sean Monahan and Tyler Toffoli at the trade deadline. They both left. They didn't lose a lot, though. I mean, they did lose Monahan and Toffoli.
Brendan Dillon,
They did lose Brendan Dillon,
Nate Schmidt, I believe.
and they did lose Nate Schmidt. And
Yeah.
it's kind of fascinating. I just think they ended up playing. I think the biggest loss and the significant move in Winnipeg is the change from Rick Bowness to Scott Arniel as coach, even though Arniel was part of the Bowness coaching staff. It's just not, you make a coaching change, it is going to be different. I think the Jets are I don't think the Jets were as good as the second place team they turned out to be last year.
Yeah, well, clearly they weren't, because they got smoked in the first round.
Yeah, when it got to that level, Colorado was just the better team. I mean, I think Josh Morrissey is a very good defenseman. I think Neil Pionk is also a very good defenseman. You've got some Kyle Connor, Mark Scheifele. They've got some really good pieces. They've got some young forwards coming up as well. You see a lot from Cole Perfetti. Eventually, Brad Lambert's going to be there. Cody Barlow is going to be there. A couple of underrated guys in.
Brandon Yeager, they traded for him, and I mean, he's a couple years away, but
but he's going to be something. Nino Niederreiter is a guy that falls under the radar. So does Vlad Nemestikov.
Yep, like both those guys actually.
I mean, I think if let's take the goalies from Minnesota, St. Louis, and Winnipeg out of the way. I think these rosters are actually fairly similar.
What
helps with what puts Winnipeg ahead is they have one of the best goalies in the game in Connor Hellebuck.
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, Vezina Trophy winner last year but here's my question, Kev, and this is it. I think they're a playoff team. They're 1 through 4 easily in this division. I don't think they lost a lot. That trade for PLD worked out great for them.
That was
Apollo. They got Velarde. Those guys are all in their top 9, I believe.
Kapari either. I think that's a guy that's going to be a player in this. Not a superstar, but he's going to be, I think, a second line, third line guy that will play there for a few years.
Well, right now they have on Daily Faceoff, they have Kapari listed as the 4th line center, and they have Iafallo as the 4th line right winger. But I feel like if those guys, that's 4 great lines you can roll out and get scoring. They have Velarde on the top line with Scheifele and Connor. I don't know what happens to them in the playoffs. I don't understand it. Like, they're a good defensive team all season. They score goals. They're good on the power play. They have maybe the best goalie of the generation that's been playing at a high level forever. And then Hellebuck gets to the playoffs. He's not good. He was terrible against, I don't know. I just don't know. Is it they can't compete with the speed of the game, or I definitely see them being a playoff team. No question about it. But it's like beyond that, are they, I mean, a team goes out in the first round enough. I mean, I know they had a conference finals run a few years ago. It's like, do they tell you who they are? And it's so frustrating because I can't think of a more deserving fan base to see a winner. They actually lost their team and were able to get them back. They have the team. I mean, if you told me the Winnipeg Jets won the Stanley Cup, I would be like, okay, I would believe it. It's not far-fetched. They have a good team. I'm with you, man. I just don't know what to make of them. They don't perform in the playoffs. I think they're going to miss Brendan Dillon, but here's the other thing. Here's another general manager that does more with less. Shovel Dayoff has just made, because they're not going to sign any big free agents to Winnipeg. They're just not going to move there. It's unfortunate for them, but it is what it is. And I just feel like it's like they just continually add talent and bring guys in. They got rid of PLD. They couldn't have come out of that better. So I'd love to see them be successful. Obviously, they're missing Logan Stanley and Ville Heinola right now. I don't know if they get those guys back. And then Jeff Anderson Dolan. I don't know if those guys are come back.
Yeah. I mean, he cleared waivers, so he's down in the minors right now.
I think he's on IR. I think he's injured though. I think they have him listed injured. Anyway, not. I mean, either way, not a big deal. I don't think Winnipeg's up against the cap or anything, so they'll have some maneuverability when it comes to to making moves and stuff, but this is a team that could compete for the Stanley Cup, but I just don't think they will. That's the unfortunate thing. I mean, they have the roster. It's just like when they play another equally good team, it's also about matchups, right? If Winnipeg doesn't play Colorado, do they get some momentum going and they feel good about their game? I mean, I felt like of the teams that were so dominant last year, and they had a hell of a season, over 100-point season last year, could have easily won that division. You know, do they just find a good matchup for them and get going? And that might be the best thing for them. But we'll see. So,
yeah, I think
we're going to find out a lot about this team tonight against the Edmonton Oilers.
Yeah,
are we not? That's going to be interesting. I'm really excited to watch that game. I'm going to pay very close attention to that game because I want to see what Edmonton is. And
yeah, it'll be fast. It is going to be fast. That's a potential first round matchup.
Could be.
That could be, like, I would not be surprised if that is a first round matchup. I have Winnipeg in the playoffs. I have them as the first wild card team.
Yep. No issues there.
They could cause some damage. They could blow out right away. I think it's not surprising either way. I think they are going to have to. I think they're going to need to step from Cole Perfetti, and I think they're going to have to add a blue liner and another forward, and I think preferably with someone with speed. I just feel ultimately they're just too slow of a hockey team. That would be my concern if they're playing the Oilers, who, I mean, for all their depth problems, I mean, they are a fast team, and I don't know if Winnipeg matches well with that, but I have them on a wild card team. I would probably have them a wild card team even in the Pacific. I don't see them ahead of Vancouver or Vegas at this point. So, but
I think they'd be top 3 if they were in the Pacific right now, just with the way it's going. But yeah, Edmonton. We'll see. I mean, I could see 5 teams coming out of this Central. I feel like, what?
I have 5 teams coming out of the Central for the playoffs.
Yeah, I was thinking you must have, because you already had Nashville and you have Winnipeg and
St. Louis.
You have St. Louis making it. So I'm like, well, Colorado, they're making it. Obviously, you said they're going to be your cup champion. And I'm going to guess the team we haven't talked about, the Dallas Stars, you have them making the playoffs. So,
oh man, I mean, this team. I mean, there's a bunch of teams that probably have a lot of what ifs through last year's run, but I think a healthy Rupe Hintz might have been a different series with Dallas and Edmonton.
Oh, 100%. And a healthy Chris Tanev for sure, which they don't have him anymore, but.
No,
that's going to be.
This is a hell of a hockey team. This really, I don't know where Rupe Hintz is on the echelon of centers, but you still have a guy. I mean, they've been able to kind of add as they are kind of growing. And Wyatt Johnson is coming. Logan Stankoven is going to be in the Calder conversation. Miro Heiskanen is an elite defenseman.
Yeah.
Jake Ottinger is a top end goaltender.
Yeah. They have everything.
But they almost are, but they're almost missing something. I mean, I think it's going to be interesting. No Joe Pavelski this year.
I think that's going to help them, man. He was not a factor in the playoffs. I mean, during the season, they'll lose some points because of guys like him, but because he's so good on the power play, but I don't know. I mean, the best thing for this team is they're going to lose Jamie Benn's salary after this year. Even if they keep him, they can keep him at like a league men deal. He's not going to be making $9 million. So that's going to free them up to add some really important pieces. I don't see how you look at this team as anything other than a Stanley Cup contender. I think they were just 2 injuries away. I mean, they were a better team than Edmonton. I had them winning the cup last year.
I did too. Yeah. I think the part of the problem was, again, they just went through a monster of a.
Yeah, they had the matchup with Vegas, which Edmonton avoided.
Yeah.
Which I thought if Edmonton had to play Vegas, I thought it was bad news for Edmonton. I thought it was a bad matchup. Again, a lot of times it's about matchups and who you have to play in the first and second rounds. And I mean, to me, Dallas is top 3 team in the NHL right now. I mean, I put Edmonton, them, and maybe the New York Rangers right there. So I really feel like if they're healthy and they have their full complement of players and they have draft and developed and
Oh,
then not rushed, I don't think there's a better scouting staff. Jim Nill, they have just crushed it. They took all the good guys from Detroit scouting and did what Detroit used to do and find guys like Henrik Zetterberg and Pavel Datsuk and yeah, I mean, is there a better two-way center in the league right now that's as skilled as Rupe Hentz? I'm so with you. I'm a huge fan of Dallas. We had Nick Barak, who's affectionately known as Get Glass Banger on our show. He's the guy that always wears white and bangs on the glass. But he's a Dallas Stars super fan, man, and he's been going to the game since he was a wee kid. He was around for when they were the Cup champs. And you know, they have a great flipping fan base there too, man, and the DFW, man. And their minor league team has just run really well too. So this team is going to win a Stanley Cup at some point in the next couple of years. It could be this year. I think they win this division easily.
really?
Yeah, I do.
What, do you think they have the superstar forward?
So it has to be Jason Robertson and Wyatt Johnson. Those guys have to be the guys. I think Robertson struggled a little bit last year. His team's kind of keyed in on him. But he's got the size and he's got the ability, and so does Johnson. You know, and then you just got to have a healthy Rupe Hentz. I mean, it's going to be interesting with Matt Duchene at second. I thought Matt Duchene played really well for them. Obviously, he re-signed. He's rounded out his game a little bit. Apologize for the on there. I don't know, man. Like any other team, there's parts of their lineup I don't like, but let's see what Maverick Bork is. I think that's a good pairing with him and Stankoven and Jamie Benn. Jamie Benn's going to be the muscle on that third line. I don't like that they weren't able to try to keep Chris Tanev. Obviously, they didn't have the cap space because they had to keep like Thomas Harley but you know, if they're healthy on the, you know, they have a pretty nice. They add Matt Dumba. I know he's playing top pair, but if you can get him to play physical but yet sound defensively.
Matt Dumba is not a terrible defenseman. Matt Dumba has gotten a bad rap, but he is not a terrible defenseman.
He's very physical. He's a guy that's going to add a super physical thing to you. And you like that in the playoffs. That's what I'm saying. So, yeah, I mean, I thought he did really well with Tampa last year when he got moved there. So, yeah, I just feel like this team could win the Cup, and I wouldn't be shocked. I do think they win this division. So we'll see. It's just one of those things, man. Like, are they healthy? Do they have their full complement? I also think, though, and there'll be somebody, and I don't know the player, but there'll be somebody that comes up from their minor leagues that makes a difference because they're not forcing their guys. I like the mentality, the way they're training their guys. If you check their socials, they do a lot of cool stuff talking about who they've got coming. I just, you know, I haven't done enough of a deep dive on this team, but I really do feel like this is a Stanley Cup contending team. They've got all the pieces. Now, just like Connor Hellebuck, we've got to see it from Ottinger. He hasn't been good in the playoffs. So
it would be a very good argument, and I could not dismiss it that you could say Skinner outperformed Ottinger in the playoffs.
Oh, he most definitely did. They won the series. I mean, again, they were missing some key guys, a healthy Rupe Hentz. You know, I would have liked to see Joe Pavelski win a Stanley Cup. 3 years younger Joe Pavelski. It would have been an interesting matchup to see the Dallas Stars versus the Florida Panthers, to be quite frank. I thought they were the two best teams all last year. And you know, records showed it, really, in my opinion. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting, man. But I do really like Dallas quite a bit. I think they're the cream of the crop in this division. But again, Colorado could win. Just depends on if they get their full complement back, this, that, or the other. So
I think it's going to come down to Colorado and Dallas, and I'm going to tell you the player it may come down to. Watch for the name Rasmus Anderson, because I think Colorado Dallas will both be in on that conversation with trade
Yeah.
deadline. And I wonder whoever gets them might end up being the edge.
Well,
I'm still sticking with Colorado. I do have Dallas second. I would not be surprised if they win this division. I would not be surprised if they win the Stanley Cup. I don't think it's an insane take at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there is a legitimate argument that they might be the two best teams in this conference. But
I think, Kev, in this division, you have 3 teams that are legit Stanley. Really, if you count Nashville, you have 4. Because if you told me Nashville won, I'd be like, oh, wow, that's amazing. But, like, I don't think Nashville is, but I do think Winnipeg coulda, maybe. But Dallas and Colorado, if somebody says they're their cup picks, like you said, I just don't see how those are bad picks. Those are the teams, man. So I 100% agree with you, man. Those are some special teams. So
I think there's 6 teams that I think could come out of the West, and it's Colorado, Dallas, Nashville, Edmonton, Vancouver, Vegas. I think all 6 of those teams you could make a legitimate argument to
agree with all that. There's no way.
I mean, that's kind of where I'm pushing back on everybody predicting the Oilers, because I just don't see this Western Conference being as easy as everybody thinks it is.
Well, Vegas will tell you, and I mean, when I say Vegas, the betting people will tell you they don't have hockey figured out. I know Edmonton is the favorite, and everybody from Sportsnet, except for 3 people, picked the Edmonton Oilers. And the other 2 teams were, I think Nick Kiprios picked Florida, and the other 2 guys picked the Dallas Stars. So, like,
and one picked New Jersey. Yeah.
Oh, somebody picked New Jersey. Okay. Yeah. I mean, look, I have yet to see it from New Jersey in the playoffs. They got the goalie now, right? They're out of excuses. They will make the playoffs this year. Yeah. No, I mean, I know you saw a lot of Markstrom there in Calgary, but I will say, yeah, I mean, it's a TBD, right? I mean, they're 2-0. They started the season off great. They played in Czechia. I didn't get to see them because you can't stream the NHL Network. Like another problem you and I talked about of U.S. streaming things. Like, God forbid you live in Montana and you want to watch the Avs, the Wild, or the Seattle Kraken. Now it looks like they've finally figured this out, but nobody has done a better job than alienating their fans than the NHL in the U.S. just because of how the regional blackout stuff goes. It's ridiculous. But I mean, if you don't live in the city limits of the team, you shouldn't be blacked out, just period. Anyway, end of discussion on that one. But yeah, man, I don't disagree with you. This is a hell of a division. It's really kind of a meat grinder. I feel like the team I'm wearing the jersey, Nashville, kind of made it even worse because they had all this talent in Marchessault and Stamkos and Shea, and it really solidified it. So I like Andrew Burnett as a coach, but yeah, I mean, to me, the cream of that division is your Stanley Cup pick, the Colorado Avalanche. Let's see what they are at the end of the year. I mean, that's the biggest question for me. And I mean, like today's roster, Dallas is ready. They have the team. They have the picks in the minors. I agree with you. Rasmus Andersson is going to be he's a right shot D too, is he not?
Yes, he is. Yeah.
I mean, Edmonton needs him so bad they can taste it, right? And they're going to have
That's not happening.
Craig Conroy will be fired on the spot if he trades.
On the spot. You're not doing that. Yeah.
I know, like, I did laugh that Matthew Tkachuk said he made everybody in Calgary happy by beating the Oilers. It's a beautiful thing, man, the Battle of Alberta, which is really kind of frustrating, man, because that Calgary team was so skilled and so talented. I also think, just a real quick hot take before we end the show, you said Rasmus Andersson. I love that. I've heard that from multiple people. What about Nazem Kadri? Here's a guy, probably a second-line center on most teams in the NHL, and really could help a team win the Stanley Cup. Is his salary too big? Could they eat a little bit of it? Is he a guy that you could see them move for assets to help? I mean, because we know what the Calgary Flames are. They're in full rebuild mode. I mean, they're going to be one of the worst teams. And look, we're a couple years away from Gavin McKenna, but we got James Higgins this next year. Like, there's some real talent coming up that people are wanting to get their hands on in the draft. And boy, Calgary could sure use some of that. What do you think about that guy?
Kadri has said that he's wanted to stay in Calgary for now, so I don't think that they'll push that.
Right.
Rasmus Anderson has been a little different because he hasn't necessarily committed to Calgary.
Well, and he's on the last year of his deal, right? So you're a moron if you don't trade him.
Right, and he's got a really reasonable contract, and he's. I mean, I don't know what you can get for him, but I do think Colorado and Dallas will be sniffing around. A few other teams will be sniffing around him too. So that's that's one guy to watch out for. But I think.
Well, and they also have, I'll just say this, another guy that they have who played very well for the Washington Capitals for the first part of the year. I don't think he did much for Vegas when he got there, but Anthony Mantha, only 30 years old, big body, right wing, could be a guy they move for some picks. And then Kuzmenko, are they going to keep Kuzmenko?
That is a very interesting question. I think that they have an agreement in place with it. I mean, friends at Fireside Chat brought this up, and I think that this is a interesting idea. I think they have an agreement in place that they're probably going to trade Anthony Mantha at the trade deadline.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised by that. So we'll see what I think he's a good placeholder to let other guys develop, and that's the important thing, right? Like, you need those installations to let your team grow. But yeah.
So they only have one. I think you're allowed. How many buyouts are you allowed? 3 per team?
Yeah.
Or 2?
Yeah, they have a buyout on their contract though, but
they do. It's Markstrom. They bought out. It's not a small percentage. It's like
they're retaining salary on Mark. Yeah, so you're talking salary retention. Yeah,
I'm sorry. I meant salary retain, buyout / retain.
Yeah.
But I think you're allowed. I think retention and buyouts are the same. They're under that same category. So you're only allowed so many of those. So the Markstrom's one's not terrible at all. It's only $1.8 million for this year and next. That's nothing. So Naz Kadri makes $7 million for the next three years after this. Even if you just bought out 50% of that, which is the max they can do, that's only $3.5 million. That's a lot of teams could afford. Colorado could pick him up right now. That's the second line center they had with their Stanley Cup. I mean, to me, that's the move to make if they don't get Landeskog. And I mean, if maybe you could get a deal where you get Rasmus Anderson in there and you add the right shot D. I don't know. I don't know what, if Colorado needs that additional defenseman, but to me, you want the goalie, but I don't know. It's going to be interesting, man. I would not be sad. One of my best friends that I served in the Army with is a diehard season ticket Avalanche holder, lives right there in Denver. So would love to see Colorado win for him again. I was at the Cup Parade when I went to visit him. I saw Bowen Byram running around, almost getting arrested by the police. It was a good time. Hopefully we see a Cup Parade in your hometown there in Vancouver soon, man. That would be beautiful, right? And so we don't have to talk. We can put the riots to rest. That fan base deserves to see a winner. Yeah. Have you done your Pacific preview yet?
We're getting to that. That will be the next one. We're trying to figure that out. So we'll discuss.
You better hurry. The season started, buddy.
I know. You call it the way too late Pacific preview, but we'll leave it here. Of course, tell us how to follow you on all the media stuff.
Yeah. So at @beard_sports on X or Twitter is the main thing I use, but I'm also the Sports Beard on Instagram, and obviously my YouTube channel is the Sports Beard. We do NHL nightly, 4 days a week, 10 p.m. Eastern, Tuesday through Friday during football season. So we will be live tonight at 10 o'clock. I've got some picks that are going to come out from the other guys that are with me are all degenerate gamblers. I am not that. I am just the host and the guy who reads and does all the hockey studying. They're all diehard hockey fans, 2 of which are Canadian. One of is an American that lives in Switzerland, and the other guy, my friend Mike, is that we call him the degenerate Bostonian. He's a Boston area guy, but he's a big college hockey guy. So we have started the college hockey show. Our second episode will be this Friday. Our second or third episode will be this Friday on my channel at 2 p.m. Eastern. So we're talking college hockey. Just to give you a big piece of information, there was an absolute massive thing that happened in the U.S. today. They basically approved Canadian Hockey League players will be allowed to come play college hockey in the States now. So obviously there's some details that have to be worked out. These guys will not be able to come do NIL deals and stuff like that because of the NCAA rules or the US rules or whatever. But like they'll be able to make money in some capacity, I think, but it has to be what they call passive income. So
Right.
I feel like there are a lot of people that will feel like this is going to thrust a lot of Canadian players. I think it will bring a bunch. What I think it'll bring is tweeners, guys who aren't ready for the NHL, but really don't need to be playing in the AHL or anything either. And so it will just strengthen our college hockey. And my hope is, and what we see in the next 10 years, is that we see more Division I teams added. Because we do have like Division III. We have a lot of hockey in the US as far as college hockey. It's very large. I think people probably would be surprised to like even Alabama and stuff has like club teams. But we'd like to see some of these big like SEC schools and stuff that have club teams, turn them into actual like, because the big thing with the states too is Title IX. You have to have a women's like team too. Well, hockey has the natural progression of that because you only need one sheet of ice for the men and the women. It's not any different. It's the same sport. So if you add hockey, you just add women's hockey. There you have you have to have that balance thing for college. So I believe it's Title IX. If I'm wrong, somebody will correct you on the thing, but it's Title IX or Title 11. I can't remember, but it's a law in the US. So it's going to be interesting. I think it's really going to help the game, which is all we care about. Those of us that love the sport, that want to see it grow, that's all we need. It just needs more exposure. It needs more eyes. If you go see a hockey game in person, it's the greatest thing in the world. Am I wrong? Is there anything better than watching a hockey game? Yeah, especially high level NHL. But like, if you ever get a chance, go to a hockey game. It's unbelievable. And I know the score doesn't sometimes reflect how exciting the game could be, but I feel like it's the greatest sport in the world to watch in person. Yeah. So
that's why we cover it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thanks for having me again, Kev. I so appreciate it. It was great, man.
All right, and we will talk to you all very soon. Follow Sean, Beardy Canuck 03, Tyler TNOBLE, Chris is Schneids, SCHNEIDZ, Gord Howe, Devin Gord Howe 09 on Instagram. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you all very soon. Bye for now.